IVC. I think I mentioned before that round here we have an annual street sale, and I've got quite lucky with the things I've managed to pick up, records, CDs, DVDs, that kind of thing in the past. Things are getting a bit thinner on the ground these days, but I did turn up at a stall some guy had set up outside his house, because that's the way this works. People set up sort of trestle tables outside their homes in the back streets around here and sell off, the kids' toys that are no longer needed, homemade cakes, pots of jam, all the usual sort of stuff. But occasionally there's a box of records. And this year, a couple of weeks ago, they had the sale, and I turned up seconds too late, as I saw a guy handing over £5 for 5 albums, the top one of which was quite possibly a grail. Now, I can't be certain because I didn't get to see the label, but what it was a mono copy of the Beatles' Please Please Me. I could tell that from the cover because it had mono written across the top of it. But was it that black and gold early Parlophone label that was only around for a couple of months in sort of March, April, May 1963? Who knows? But talking to the vendor, he had seen the Beatles live a couple of times, one time at the Cavern. So I'm guessing he was on board pretty early. So he may well have bought their first album when it first came out. So perhaps I missed an original black and gold Parlophone label, mono Beatles, Please Please Me. I've got my 1970s stereo reissue, which will have to do for now. But gutting. But I did buy a few things that the guy who walked off with that mono copy left behind, including a couple of Beatles albums. The Red Album, 62 to 66 on red vinyl, and the Blue Album, 67 to 70. A couple of fantastic compilations. Do I need them? Not really, but there is something a bit special about the Beatles that, considering they were only together for 8 years, in those years they managed to produce so much good music that 2 double albums doesn't really gather together all their hits. An incredible body of work, really, when you think about it. So yeah, I'm certainly hanging on to these for now, and I paid £1 each for these. As you see, that one's red vinyl, and it's in fantastic shape, as I imagine was that mono Please Please Me. I will stop going on about it in a minute, but this is a couple of weeks later as well. On the day, I was just beating myself up that I didn't leave the house 2 minutes earlier, and it would have been mine. This is also a promo copy, which is good to have. And the same guy had a couple of other reasonably interesting things. A Guy Clark album, Texas Cooking, which when I heard the first track, I thought, no, I'm not hanging on to this. It's a little bit too Tex-Mex kind of good-timey, not too great. But the album really improves as it goes on. I have one other Guy Clark album. I really enjoy that. So I'm going to hang on to this for the time being. Again, £1. These are all £1. Eddie Guitar Burns, Detroit Black Bottom. Didn't know a lot about this. Still don't really. Decent blues album. Not spectacular, but it's good. Again, I'll keep on listening to that, see if it's worth hanging on to. And I also got a copy of the Notorious Bird Brothers. This is an Ed Sell reissue, and my existing copy is an Ed Sell reissue, so I've no need for this. So this will go on eBay and help pay for the £5 or £6 or whatever I laid out on these records. So there's some recent purchases from that one particular street sale, and the album that could have been. So there you go. That's the street sale stuff out of the way. Now for some other recent pickups, and some of these do go back a few months, I've got to say. I I just can't keep up with doing videos on the stuff I pick up. But these are things I haven't shown before, so I thought they were probably worth digging out now and showing to you. Now, first up is an album by a guy who, prior to this album, was known as the Dutch Dylan. This guy called Boudewijn de Groot, and this is his Picnic album. Came out in 1968, and it's kind of regarded as the Dutch language Sgt. Pepper's. And you can kind of see from the artwork that's what he was going for. I mean, fantastic sleeve art on that. And there he is having his picnic. And this album is a concept album, pretty much. Not quite sure what the concept is, but it is based around a picnic. Yeah, the first side is called Picnic, and is split into, 5 or 6 separate pieces. The title track of which starts off with sort of sitar, and is the performance of a fictitious band, a bit like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, I suppose. There's lots of heavily reverbed, echoing, wordless cries on here. It's very trippy. There's some chopping cello and some brass as well. So it's got that kind of baroque psych pop feel to it. The Dutch language isn't the easiest listen to the uninitiated. It's a very kind of glottal sort of, I don't know, it's quite harsh on the ear, I find. I'm still getting used to it, but the music's fantastic. Obviously I don't understand a word that he's singing about, but there's enough weird sounds, carnival noises, psychedelic sounds, lots of echoing and phasing on here to make it an interesting listen. And you get moments like on, track Tegenland, where he seems to blatantly steal the Foxy Lady Jimi Hendrix riff, but plays it on a piano instead, so that's interesting. Then on the B side, the first track, Canzone 4711, has a real prominent brass band feel to it. And what else we got here? There's a track called Eva, which is quite an intimate folk song with guitar and violin. So there's all sorts of styles on here, but they all have that kind of Pepper-esque feel of experimentation with multiple instruments that you wouldn't normally expect in a rock sort of setting. And this is kind of equal parts baroque pop, psych pop, music hall, and dare I say sort of Eurovision. It has that kind of feel to it in places, but it is worth a listen. And I picked this up for, I think it's 10 quid I paid for this, and I know it goes for a lot more than that, so I was very happy to give it a try for 10 quid. There it is on the Decca label, and as you can see, it's a really nice copy as well. So Boudewijn de Groot, I'm probably butchering that name, but hey. And next up is an album that originally came out on the Decca label in 1971. That's a bit pricey to pick up, but I picked up what has turned out to be a really good reissue. Came out in 1996 on the Royal Sound label, I think. That's what it is. And it's Megaton's self-titled album. And this is kind of blues rock, hard rock, with some psych and some krautrock leanings as well. To me, it sounds like a mashup of Led Zeppelin, Ozzy, Santana, and the Glitter Band. It's just got some of that glitter stomp to it. Plus a little bit of Blue-Eyed Soul, I suppose, as well. So it's a little bit all over the place, but as a whole, it's a really good listen. It starts off with a track called Out of Your Own Little World, which has a very 1970s Rolling Stones feel to it, but it's heavier. Then for me, one of the highlights is the second track, Niagara, which has a real catchy chorus. There's percussive Santana vibes throughout. And yeah, it's a really nice groover, that track. There's almost a Led Zeppelin heaviness to this in places, like I say. But a horn rock feel elsewhere. There's an Afro-Cuban beat to some of it, like the first track on side 2, Carry It On at the end. And then you get the odd moment of sort of piano-led 60s pop rock as well, as on Life Was Easy Yesterday, which has that kind of 60s into 70s Colosseum jazz rock sort of feel to it, with an almost Chris Farlow type vocal on it. So, like I say, it's a little bit all over the place, but it is a really good listen. And I suppose what makes it really good is the heavy guitars and those kind of Afro-Cuban rhythms. It's a really nice combination. And it has beautiful cover art, I think. Always really like that cover. So there you go, Megaton. And next up is one I've not really had long enough to pick out individual tracks that have really grabbed me yet, but the whole album sounds incredible. I love this. This is one of the best purchases I've made in quite some time. Another Dutch band. It's a band called Mayfly, and the original of this came out in 1973, and this is a 2013 reissue on the Pseudonym label. Quite a nice bit of packaging. It's a band biography in the centre there. And there's the Pseudonym label. Don't know whether you can see that. So what's it like? It's kind of acoustic psych folk with a baroque feel, I suppose. Lots of plucked acoustic guitar on here. There's woodwinds and violin, cello and piano. And at times it reminds me of a less scary or creepy Comus. And let's face it, the Comus album, if you've heard that, what really makes it stand out is the creepiness and scariness. But this has got that same sort of acoustic folk rock feel to it. If anything, it's probably more like ELO around the time of the first ELO album. Tracks like Nelly Takes Her Bow on the first ELO album. That's kind of a good reference point for what this sounds like. Has that feel of music from a sort of pre-electric, pre-industrialized era, even though clearly it's not. But it's definitely got that sort of pastoral acoustic vibe to it. The voice on here sounds quite a lot like Jeff Lynne at times, mixed with a little bit of Ray Davies, I suppose. There is occasional electric slide guitar on here, which really sort of lifts some of the tracks, and the sparing use of drums. I think just on 2 or 3 of the tracks, if I remember right. But instruments listed on here: flute, saxophone, cello, violin, electric piano, electric guitars, Spanish guitars, lead and slide guitar. So yeah, the electrics are on there, but they're subtle. But this is a great album. This is a really good listen. I do recommend checking this one out. And it can be had pretty cheaply, the reissue at least. And here's another album I've had for a while and just haven't got round to showing it. And I know other people have shown this on the VC. I think in particular I remember, who was it? Oh, DJ Mellow Yellow. He showed this album by this band and was raving about it, which is probably when I first heard about it. And I picked up a reissue of this, Mecky Markman self-titled album from 1967. This is on the Absinthe label. Couldn't tell you when it came out. But they've done a very good job pressing this, actually. A decent pressing. It's quiet, there's good separation between the instruments. Sometimes these reissues can sound a bit flat, but this is pretty dynamic sounding. And it has 2 bonus tracks tagged onto one at the end of the first side, one at the end of the second side, which are the A and B side of a 1967 single that the guys put out. This is a really, really good album. It's kind of like a mashup of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, the Brian Auger Trinity, and funky freeform jazz rock. It is amazing. It's a really, really strong album. As an English vocalist, or I should say the vocals are in English, I think the vocalist is Swedish, and the vocal and the guitar are very Hendrix influenced, no getting away from it. And the drums as well have that big, loose, clattery, phased Mitch Mitchell sound to them. So if you want something that sounds a lot like Hendrix, but with a lot of other influences chucked into the mix, this could be for you. The opening track, which is called Opening, is an instrumental and has a very stone vibe and delivery to it. It really, they set their stall out right from the start. The highlights on here for me, probably actually the single, the A side of a single, last track on the first side, which is called Midnight Land. It's got a real funky freeform jazz feel to it and sax on it. It's a really good song. Like I say, the Hendrix vocal is all over here, particularly on the first track on side 2, I Had a Horse. That's really got that Hendrix vocal to a T. Other highlights, I suppose, Love Feeling, the 5th track on the second side. There's vibes, sort of xylophone on there, Spanish guitar, sax, some tabla to add to that sort of psychedelic Eastern sort of sound. It's very trippy, quite disorientating in a way. Has like a muddy, soporific pace to it. It's a psych classic. Really is. I mean, it doesn't get talked about as often as English or American psych albums, but probably should be, because it's everywhere near as good. This is a fantastic album. There's fuzz guitar on here. I mean, particularly on the track Please. Pretty chaotic stuff. It's free form, fuzz drenched, absolutely superb. So yeah, do yourself a favour and check out Mecky Markman. They did another album which I need to find as well, but this will keep me going for the time being. So good. And then here's an album that I passed up picking up an original copy of this a couple of years ago, £5, but it had a bit of a scratch on it, and I just thought, was it really worth picking it up? Probably was, to be honest. It may have played through. So I've been looking for another copy since, and I managed to pick up a really good repress, actually, and it's Paul Parish's The Forest of My Mind. Love that cover. I mean, how psych pop can artwork be? That's amazing. So the original of this came out in 1968. Paul Parish, if he's known for anything, is known for having sung the original title song for the first season of the Brady Bunch, apparently. This is a really good album. It doesn't get as much praise heaped on it as it perhaps should. I think people like Richard Morton Jack was certainly one of the people who wrote in the Galactic Ramble book. Don't really rate it that highly. I think it's fantastic. It's got a sort of lyrical theme running through it. All the songs seem to deal with nature, very sort of ecology minded. And apart from Paul Parish, you've got who is it? Dennis Coffey playing guitar on here, and he would go on to have a very successful career as a sort of sideman and produce a few sort of exploito psych albums of his own, I think. But I think this was one of his early sessions playing guitar on here, and a guy called Mike Theodore on keyboards. But Paul Parish is the real star here. The songs are fantastic. It starts with a track called English Sparrows, which again sets his stall out. Tells you exactly what kind of thing you're getting. It's period orchestrated pop. It reminds me of Donovan, Chad and Jeremy, early Bee Gees, Simon and Garfunkel. You get the idea. But the thing that really stands out on that track for me are the swooning strings, which really remind me of Bobby Gentry's Ode to Billy Joe. So there's all that period detail on here. It's a fantastic sounding album. Elsewhere, the title track, Walk in the Forest of My Mind, is very dreamy. There's lots of phasing on that and echo and soaring strings. Some horns, fuzz guitar, everything you could really want from your psych pop, to be honest. Elsewhere, Dialogue of Wind and Lover. It's a real sitar drone. The snake charmer flute on that. and sort of trudging, hypnotic kettle drum rhythm as well. Yeah, it's a bit special, this album. I mean, the artwork would have made me buy this anyway. I'd just make the assumption it was a good album from that sleeve art. It's on the Mapache Records label, which is a new one on me, but I think it's distributed by Wawa. Didn't hold out for very long, did I? Yeah, so Wawa are a very trusted label. Always produce fantastic reissues. So yeah, I can thoroughly recommend this. Oh, and it comes with a biography in the insert. So Paul Parish, worth checking out. And finally, a charity shop buy of an album that I've been after for quite some time, and very glad to have it. It's even better than I was expecting it to be honest. And it's the Illinois Speed Press from 1969 on the CBS label. And again, this is another album that doesn't get an awful lot of love. I obviously have very different taste to some people, but to me, this is a bit special. The guitars are really to the fore on here. There's occasional subtle organ, and the vocalist has a real sort of gruff, raunchy voice. Sounds great to me. It doesn't start off brilliantly. The first track is called, what is it called? It's called Overture. And it's one of those kind of sound collages, or that collage made up of little bits of all the songs that follow it on the album, which probably was a fun thing to do for the first person who ever did it, but I think that kind of thing happened a little bit too often, so it's a little bit pointless. It's not awful, but it's just, why do it? But then it follows with a fantastic track called Get in the Wind, which is a dirty, fuzzy, hard rocker. It's like cream with acid fried guitar. Superb, it really is. And that's followed by, got a help with the titles are on the back sleeve, Hard Luck Story, which is a bluesy groover, which really reminds me of Butterfly Blue by Iron Butterfly, which is a favourite Iron Butterfly track, so can't go wrong with that one. There's some bluesy shuffle on here, scorching, overdriven guitar, and like I say, some subtle organ in places where it's needed. Then you get a track like PNS, When You Come Around, don't know what PNS stands for, which is rootsy and mid-paced, and has a real Buffalo Springfield, Steppenwolf kind of feel to it. There's mean fuzz guitar solos on here. The occasional folkier sort of moment, like on Sky Song, which has a kind of folky floating acoustic guitar on there, and that's very tasteful. Another highlight is the track, get us right, Beauty, which is fuzzy rural psych, I guess, as a double-tracked fuzz guitar solo, which is killer, and drumming that sounds very much like Keith Moon. It's not Keith Moon, but it's got that kind of feel to it. And then I think the final track is the final track, Free Ride. Yeah, that I suppose is more bluesy hard rock, but has a bit of a Derek and the Dominoes feel to it. So all in all, if you like a bit of rural, fuzzy, hard psych with occasional folky elements, this could be right up your street. And it's certainly up mine. Really great album. And I didn't pay a huge amount for this. I think it's about a tenner, something like that. So I'm very, very pleased to have it. And I bought it not really having listened to it, and perhaps the odd track here and there, but thinking, just looked interesting. And thank goodness I didn't believe the reviews I'd read, because it really doesn't get a lot of love, but yeah, I can recommend it. So there you go. Those are my recent pickups, and that is the story of the grail that got away. Take care. See you soon.